Ravinder Bawa reporting there. Now, for more on how India's banknote surprise is shaping the economy, I spoke with Ankur Patel. He's the co-founder and chief investment officer at R2 Macro. I asked when these reforms might start to pay off.
I think it will actually take a few quarters. So in the short term, India's tourism industries will take certainly a large hit. The real estate market will take a hit because right now a lot of real estate transactions are actually done in cash. You also have to understand that in India, about 3/4 of all transactions across the country are heavily involved the use of cash. That's very, very kind of abnormal, especially if you compare that to a modern day economy like the United States, where only about a quarter of transactions are cash-based. So it'll take a little bit before the new cash is firmly in circulation. Once inflation rates go down and interest rates in the banking system go down because there is more cash available, I think then you will start seeing some of the positive effects, but it will take many quarters for that to actually happen.
So real estate, as you mentioned, an industry that's being affected by this. What are some of the other industries, and perhaps also what does this mean for small businesses and local traders?
All of them are taking a major hit right now. I think the real estate market is probably going to take the largest hit. In India, it's very common for transactions in the real estate market to happen with a heavy amount of under-the-table cash. This is a kind of black market economy where the transactions are kept off the books to avoid taxes. That's going to take a hit because those transactions aren't going to take place. Real estate market prices will take a hit as well. I think tourism, it will be hit particularly hard because I think if you see in the kind of travel advisories in countries such as the United States and Canada, United Kingdom, those governments are actually telling their citizens to avoid or be careful of actually moving or really traveling to India, primarily because the availability of cash is going to be pretty hard to obtain. And then the retail sector, especially in a very busy season right now, you're not seeing that many transactions happen, for example, in jewelry, which again is a very commonly accessed market in India.
So how is this affecting tourism? We know that outside of the hotels, it's very hard to find places where you can use your credit card. So how is all this filtering out into the tourism industry?
I think there are actually two sides of the tourism industry. So on the high end, if you go to a high-end boutique hotel, most of those transactions are actually credit card based. You see wealthy tourists around the world come down to India, and those hotels are even actually allowing the tourists that come through to exchange the old rupee notes for new ones. The tourism market that gets hit hardest are the ones that involve budget travelers or travelers that go into remote locations where, again, all the transactions essentially are cash-based. And for them, they actually have very difficult time obtaining either the new rupee notes or actually parting with their old rupee notes. So for them, they're kind of stuck in the long lines at ATMs and banks, just like the local Indians are. And those tourists aren't likely to return in the near term because of the painful experiences that they've had.
Now, for people who are traveling to and from India, we see that Nepal's banks are now refusing to accept some of the new notes because they're saying that they haven't actually received official notice from India's central bank. So then what does this mean for travel between countries and the value of the rupee perhaps going forward?
The rupee is going to depreciate. It already has. It's going to continue that way for some time. That ultimately, longer term, will cause tourism to bounce back. It'll be cheaper to travel to India, of course, as a result. But in the short term, if you look at Nepal and tourism back and forth from there, that certainly will take a huge hit. I think it creates rigidities in the tourism sector. And in the short term, as I mentioned earlier, almost all these sectors are going to take a very, very hard hit. You could see Indian GDP contract by 2% over the next few quarters purely because of the currency ban.
And so just lastly, for everyday Indians who are really dealing with this, are there any recommendations that the government's giving them to try and ease some of the frustrations and give them some sort of comfort about when this transition, at least the worst of it, might be over?
I think right now the government has certainly been ill-prepared. I don't know if they didn't foresee a response of this magnitude, but one thing that they are trying to do is make cash widely available, make cash available through the banks and the ATMs to alleviate some of the lines that you've seen. But it's been very slow, and their message has been over and over again that the lines will get shorter as more and more new rupee notes become available. But unfortunately, in reality, that hasn't happened yet. And 3 weeks into this experiment, I think the implementation, you could say it's been overall very, very poor. So I think that any additional comfort that Modi and his team deliver, I don't think will be well received by Indian locals. It's certainly going to hit Modi's popularity as a result.